Hello and welcome everybody to our Planning Committee at Lichfield District Council on the 29th of July 2024. This is a publicly broadcasted meeting that is live streamed via our website and available on YouTube. I would therefore ask you to conduct yourselves in an appropriate manner. I welcome those present in the public seating area and ask you to be respectful to the committee members, its officers, as well as those speaking. I ask that you remain seated and quiet during these proceedings. My name is Councillor Harvey Coggins and I am Chair of Lichfield's Planning Committee. In a moment, I will ask everyone participating in this meeting to introduce themselves. Before doing so, can I remind everybody in the meeting to ensure that your mobile phone and electronic devices are either switched off or muted throughout the session. For those who have registered to speak, please ensure that your content is relevant and material to the debate in hand, and that you are mindful of the allotted speaking time. If you go over time, you will be asked to stop immediately. When speaking, please speak directly into the microphone so that those following from home, as well as those in the room, can see and hear you clearly. When you are not speaking, please ensure that your microphone is switched off. Planning Committee is a non-political, quasi-judicial committee bound by national planning policy framework, Lichfield's local plan and supplementary planning guidance. Our decisions are informed by planning considerations tied to these policies, but it is not a pure science. We must weigh up benefit and harm when coming to a view. The arrangements for conducting this meeting will be as follows. Officers will introduce each application. Any members of the public or applicants or agents who have registered to speak will then be invited by me to address the committee in turn. Members are reminded to keep their questions to the point and on matters of clarification for planning issues only. Technical questions or clarification of details of the application will generally best be directed to the officers. Committee members will then discuss and decide on the officers' recommendations on each application. May I also be clear that we cannot receive questions or comments from anyone in the public seating area. Please be assured that the committee will aim to thoroughly question and consider all matters before coming to a decision. When we come to vote on each application, I will initially ask all members to confirm they are minded to approve the recommendations in the report by raising their hand. I will then ask those of you voting against the recommendation or abstaining to confirm the specific planning reasons you are doing so. In event of a vote being carried against the officer's recommendation, I will ask officers to comment on the validity of the planning reasons, and if recommended by officers, we'll ask members to vote again on whether to defer that item for a further report on those reasons. If for any reasons a member is not present for the whole of an item, they will be asked not to vote on an application. I will now ask all members and then officers participating to introduce themselves. If we can start with members from Councillor Checkland, if you can just introduce yourself just with your name, not your ward or your party. Thank you.
Good evening, Councillor Evans.
Good evening, Councillor Rushton.
Good evening, Councillor Vernon.
Good evening, Councillor Anketel.
Kerry Challoner, Development Management Manager.
Good evening, Chair. I'm Christine Lewis. I'm the Elections and Democratic Manager and also Deputy Monitoring Officer. And with your indulgence, please, Chair, the members of the committee have just introduced themselves, but apart from Councillor Anketel, didn't use their mic, so anybody watching wouldn't have actually picked that up. So I was just going to go through your names quickly, just so anybody watching, whether it be in the other room or at home. So we have here, as well as yourself, Chair, who is Councillor Harvey Coggins. We have Councillor Ashton, who is Vice Chair. We have Councillors Checkland, Mears, Cross, Marshall, Powell, Sonia Wilcox, Sharon Taylor, Evans, Rushton, Vernon, and of course, Anketal, who did come up on the live stream. Thank you.
Hello there. Hi, I'm Stuart Evans. I'm the legal advisor for tonight's committee.
Ian Long, Principal Planning Consultant for Lichfield West Midlands Trading Services. Mark Evans, Staffordshire County Council Highways.
Okay, thanks for that. We'll begin with number 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we've received 2 apologies, which are from councillors Galvin and Salter. Everybody else is present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Number 2, declarations of interest. Can anybody with a declaration of interest please raise their hand? Okay, we'll start with Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. I declare on case number 22/00106/FULM, land off Horner Avenue, Fradley. I'm a resident. I'm also the ward councillor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilcox. Okay, thank you. Any others? Anybody else? Okay, well, I need to also declare an interest on 23/01438/REMM land at Cricket Lane. I have attended a meeting with the developers around it was over a year ago, around 14 months ago, and I merely listened to a presentation. I just need to declare that. Thank you. Yeah.
I would like to declare an interest in 22/00106 FULM in that one of the speakers is known to me.
Okay, thank you. So number 3 on the agenda, minutes of previous meetings. Of the previous meeting. Has anybody got anything they'd like to raise on that? Oh, on the on the accuracy. No? Okay. Okay, number 3 moved. Okay, so number 4, planning applications. Okay, agenda item number 4 is case number 22/00106/FULM, land off Horner Avenue, Fradley, Lichfield. Okay, so now I hand over to the officer to present.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, we've got 16 people sat in the overflow rooms, just to make members aware of that. It's also really important that everybody presses a button on the mic so they can hear what's actually being said as well. Okay, so item 1 on the agenda this evening is the application at Horner Avenue. The application is for 109 dwellings and associated works, including the access off Horner Avenue. There's an emergency access also off Ward Close and a construction holding area off Common Lane and the Shore Drive junction. So we just look at the aerial picture there. I think members are familiar with the site. We've carried out a site visit back, I think it was back in May. So just in general history terms, in September 2021, officers refused consent for 115 homes under delegated authority. The appeal was that the applicants appealed the decision, which was heard at a hearing on the 14th of February. I believe some of you were in attendance. And there was a 12-page appeal decision released to us in May 2023. There are some main differences between the applications. Ask any questions later on, but the main differences I would highlight are the site area. The overall access points remain the same off Horner Avenue and with the emergency access off Ward Close. Sorry, my clicker's not working very well there. The The red line you will notice has changed. It doesn't include an area here that was an area of public open space and a play area before. The red line's also been amended to include the Shore Drive Common Lane construction holding area. The public open space has been ratified, and within the site, alterations have been made to the drainage to make the drainage attenuation basin slightly smaller. And also we've got allotments located on the site now as well. The number of houses since the first application has been reduced from 115 to 109. The construction management plan has changed significantly and will be, I'm sure, part of the debate this evening. We're currently on, we are on version 9 forms of recommendation this evening. Affordable housing provision has also changed, and that's in line with our dynamic viability model, which kind of goes up and down each year, depending on how many houses are built and so on, in line with policy H2 of the local plan. So the affordable housing has reduced slightly. And there's also improvements to the Hilliards Cross A38 junction, which form part of this application, which didn't form part of the previous application. So just to recap on site and surroundings, we now have a 4.5 hectare site, which is allocated for employment land in policy EMP1 of the local plan allocations document. The site is accessed through a residential housing estate, which we saw at the time of our site visit. So the site access comes down. This is Worthington Road, and then this is Horner Avenue. So that's the main access into the site. The A38, just to give you your bearings, runs along this end of the site. Controversially, as you can see this evening, there's lots of residents present because it is obviously quite a controversial application locally. Just to recap, we received 122 and the 16 in the other room as well. We received 122 responses to the first round of consultations. We received some amended information, which we put out to reconsultation again, where we received 69 responses. And then in the update sheet this evening, you'll see that we received an extra 5 responses. So just to recap the photographs, this is the access, where the access would go at the end of Horner Avenue. Photograph 1 shows the actual access into the site, which is here. And then photograph 2 shows a view up Horner Avenue. I'll just clarify that them arrows are incorrect on that plan. They're actually they should be pointing here because that is Horner Avenue. So just to make that clarification to members. This is inside the site. It's a pretty flat level site. You can't really see it on the photographs, but you can at the one end of the site on photograph 3, there's some lorries there, and that's the A38. Then on this site is on this photograph is some of the large industrial buildings. This is a view of the Shore Lane and Worthington Road junction, where the construction holding area will be. I've got some more slides on that later on. So in terms of the site layout plan, 109 dwellings, as I've said, are proposed 1 bed, 2 bed, 3 bed and 4 bed. There'll be 31 affordable dwellings. The red ones on this plan would be affordable rented and the blue ones would be shared ownership. 28% of the overall housing would be affordable. And there's an offer on the table from Platform Housing who would deliver that affordable housing. This site layout plan shows more of the public open space. We've got play area in the middle, amenity green space, which is down the bottom, along with some allotments. We've got natural and semi-natural green space along the top. Again, I'll come back to that. That would all be managed by a section 106 that would ensure that that's delivered. These drawings just show the proposed houses which are being put forward. So you've got some of the street scenes there. And then this slide shows the protected trees. The application has been fully supported by our arboricultural surveys and plans and reports, which have been accepted by the tree officer. There is a tree would need to be removed, which is tree 23 on that plan there, and that would be to facilitate the access. So that's an English oak tree, category C tree. Yeah.
Could I just ask, is that working?
Yeah.
Could I just ask members of the public, please, to be quiet and let us do our jobs? Thank you.
So the information submitted within the application states that that's a category C tree, which has been accepted by our tree officer. The TPO was put on the site in December 2020. And as you can see from this plan here, there are no TPOs in the Holden, in the construction Holden area. So in terms of the principle of the development, that's discussed in the officer report before you this evening. The site is allocated under the EMP1 policy for employment land. So in effect, what the local plan seeks to see on there is industrial buildings. Unfortunately, the access to the site precludes getting industrial traffic along Horner Avenue. So we've had our policy team did get a legal view taken on that, and policy EMP1 does have a clause in the bottom of it to say, if you want, hang on, I'll read it out to you actually. Such other development proposals would also be supported if it can be demonstrated that the continued use of the site or its development for employment or employment uses causes or would lead to site-specific environmental problems such as noise, pollution of traffic generation, recognising the environmental benefits to be gained by redeveloping these sites for non-employment uses. So that's in terms of the principle. You can see the officer's recommendation there fully set out in the report. The design and layout of the site is considered to now be acceptable. This slide's just showing that there needs to be an acoustic barrier. I didn't know if members might ask some questions about that, because along this boundary, it is a 5 metre high acoustic barrier, which is comprised of basically a mound with fencing above it. This plan is just a screen grab showing how that would work. You've got your protected trees, you've got your tree protection, and the acoustic barrier sits outside of that and outside also of the rear gardens of the properties. So that's residential amenity in terms of the future occupiers and the sound barriers. And then existing residents is obviously a big cause for concern in terms of residential amenity, and that's mainly covered through the construction management plan, which we'll come on to in a minute. In terms of ecology, we've got 20%. The 20% biodiversity net gain that our local plan requires is set out, and that's achieved. Ecology are happy with that. And then there's also enhancement through bird and bat boxes. Cannock Chase Special Area of Conservation mitigation measures would be paid through the Section 106. In terms of drainage, the site is in flood zone 1, so there are no drainage concerns in principle. However, we do have a condition requiring drainage details to be submitted as requested by Severn Trent. I believe Severn Trent have been on site in the last few days, and that's completely separate to this application. This is just their statutory undertakers, so they can carry out works under their own remit. So moving on to the access and highway safety. The main issues are set out in the report as the impact on the wider network. So that was the A38. That was a reason for refusal last time. The access to the site along Horner Avenue, which again has been a major issue to be, I think we all know that.
Sorry, can I just ask again that members of the public remain quiet, please? We've got a decision to make, and it's important that we hear all the evidence correctly. Yeah, we have got another room that you can go in and hear this on a live stream.
Does anybody want to move through to the overflow room so they can hear? And nope. Okay, I'll carry on. Okay, so in terms of the access to the site along Horner Avenue, that has been given great consideration. It was also considered by the inspector when they dismissed the last appeal. The inspector did set quite an agenda when he wrote that appeal, which is 12 pages long. And obviously that becomes a material consideration in what's before us this evening. This has also changed since the last application, and that 52 Horner Avenue would be rejigged effectively. So instead of the parking being alongside the house, facing onto the junction, it would be moved around to be perpendicular along the rear boundary of the site. So that would give them the 3 spaces that they need for their 5-bedroom property. Also, there's a public footpath would go in round here, which is 2 meters wide, I believe. I'm looking at Mark front. Yeah. And then a crossing would be there. Okay, this is a view up Horner Avenue. Members have obviously visited Horner Avenue and have seen for themselves the width of the street and so on. Now, this is the construction hold down area. I've put this slide on to basically show the tree situation on site. There are no protected trees on site. However, back in October 2011, it was a lot clearer. Now we've got some self-set trees and so on. That was a question that was asked by members, but there is no plans to remove any of the trees anyway on that site. So this was one of the plans that we had at the site visit. Just to confirm, the banksman would meet the delivery drivers at the end of Horner Avenue. They wouldn't actually walk round Common Lane and Worthington Road, which I just wanted to clarify that because I may have confused people on the night. So just to confirm, the banksman would meet the delivery drivers here. And then they would then walk them down Horner Avenue and into the site. Just to clarify some of the construction management plan. The construction management plan confirms the working hours on the site. It confirms that dilapidation surveys would be undertaken prior to construction work starting. So any works that affect the local roads would be covered by the developer. So any repairs or remedial works that they create, they will have to address. Vehicles will be limited to 10 by 2.5 meters. Contractors and suppliers would enter contracts to ensure compliance with time slots and so on. As I said before, banksmen would meet all vehicles at the entrance to Horner Avenue. There would be a temporary traffic regulation order along Horner Avenue to prevent parking during the day, Monday to Friday, with an extra parking, an overflow residence parking area set out within the site. This would be illuminated as well, where necessary. And there'd be signage complete with site manager's details to be posted around the locality. This approach has been based on other developments, which is where it's worked successfully, and they would propose 40 deliveries over 2 weeks. That would be a maximum of 4 per day. The site compound within the application site would allow for 40 cars and vans, which would be the construction staff, and that would be within the site as well. There's also other parts like dampening down and wheel washing and so on to make sure that the local roads remain clean. And the developer would have post regular newsletters and keep in contact with residents. One of the questions we asked as planning officers was how are you going to get your biggest equipment onto that site? Roof trusses was the one that sprung to my mind, but cranes and so on. And they've confirmed that they could all be delivered on a 10 meter base HGV. Which handily is exactly the same size as our refuse fleet. So I've just put the specifications of our refuse fleet on there. So that's just over 10 meters long.
I don't want to have to ask anybody to leave. It's really important that we hear this. So if you could just be quiet, thank you.
On site, council has asked a number of questions. So I'll just go through them questions and then answer them, and then I'll hand back to the chair. So the first question was, are there any tree issues associated with the construction holding area, and how many square meters is the holding area? So as I said before, there are no tree issues with the construction holding area, and we don't have any protected trees. The tree officers have confirmed that they wouldn't protect the trees that are within that site. Trees that surround it are not impacted on how it will be used, and the total area is 1,245 square metres. Will there be double yellow lines on Common Lane opposite the Halden area? There are no proposals to have double yellow lines on Common Lane opposite the Halden area. There are no double yellow lines along the stretch of road, and it is currently used by HGVs, larger HGVs than will be accessing the application site. The time span was asked about the Halden area, and that's 3 years. What is the protocol for ensuring that banksmen are actually walking the vehicles out of the construction Halden pen to the entrance to the site? And that's what made me think maybe I'd confuse people on the evening. It's from the end of Horner Avenue. And that's all set out in the construction management plan, which can be enforced. How many houses does Worthington Road serve? We think it's in the region of 700 houses. How does the developer intend to bring machinery onto the site initially? Is there a process for this? Machinery will be brought into the site through the proposed access for all site traffic. No vehicle will be bigger than that as what has been tracked and detailed in the construction management plan. A member asked, what have Severn Trent Water said about the proposals? Will pressure be put on existing sewage system? Severn Trent Water raised no objections. What are the times of the road parking restriction on Horner Avenue? And this would be between 9 and 5. It is stated that the developer will provide an alternative parking area for residents, which is the 12 spaces within the site. Who will be enforcing the 9 to 5 traffic order? Here we go. Any temporary traffic regulation order on Shore Drive and Horner Avenue will be enforced by Stoke-on-Trent City Council, who are partners with Staffordshire County Council. They would carry out enforcement on behalf of Staffordshire County Council. The civil enforcement officers have the powers to issue a penalty charge notice within the TTRO zone. They don't have the powers to remove a vehicle. And the fines for that are higher level offences of £70, reduced to 35 if paid within 14 days, and lower level offences is £50, reduced to 25 if paid within 14 days. So effectively, Stoke-on-Trent City Council do the enforcement. Who owns a public space on Moor Close? That would be Evans of Leeds currently, and they are they have been served notice with this application. Will there be an informative in the report about the maintenance of the public open space? There doesn't need to be an informative attached to the decision about the public open space because this will be secured and enforced through the legal agreement. And that concludes my presentation. So over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Kerry. So now we move on to the speakers. Okay, so the first speaker that I'm calling is Glenn Bown, Chair of Fradley Parish Council. Okay, so you've got 5 minutes to speak. Your time speaking begins when you start speaking, and when you get to 30 seconds of the 5 minutes, you'll be given a warning, so you'll know that you're coming up to the end. Okay? Okay, thank you.
After reading the planning report, you will conclude that this is the perfect planning application. It's not. Is it too good to be true? Well, yes, it is. One side of the site will be bordered, as has been said, by a 3-metre-high bun top with 2 metres worth of fencing, and this will protect residents from a 24/7 lorry noise, which is from a distribution centre just 6 metres away from it. The developer's acoustic specialists say this is adequate. The owners of the distribution centre, their specialists, say that the noise will without doubt blight new residents. The site also borders the A38. This noisy major trunk road runs only 30 metres from the proposed blocks of social rented flats. These are protected by their garden fence and their windows, which will be sealed shut to help quell the incessant noise. Social housing does not have to be poor housing. Please don't approve the slums of the future. It's not just rich folk that need windows that open. Existing buns. There's existing bunds all down the side of one side of the site. It's designated public open space in the previous S106 agreement. There were informal footpaths across these bunds to enable access to local shops, to promote walking and cycling, and to reduce car journeys. The developers have deliberately allowed these previously well-used paths to become overgrown and impassable, and they now plan to repurpose them for this development, breaking legal agreements. Who at LDC has given permission for these agreements to be torn up? Are you confident both LDC and the developers are acting within the law? LDC have recently taken S106 enforcement action, confirming the status of these paths, but your planners are simultaneously surrendering the rights to residents to use them. A strange anomaly, I think. It's uncommon for construction issues to be something that your committee can consider. But in this case, highway safety will be put at risk, and that makes it material. The planning inspector from the failed appeal made exactly this point, that construction concerns must be resolved. The only available access for construction vehicles is through the narrow and sleepy Horner Avenue cul-de-sac. And according to Staffordshire Highways guidance, it should serve a maximum of 50 dwellings, not the 120 proposed. The planning inspector said it's only guidance and it doesn't say that it can't serve more. Conversely, of course, it doesn't say that it should serve more. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is up to you. Staffordshire Highways provides no clue as to why their guidance can now be ignored when they are normally so rabid about developers adhering to it. Perhaps it's because if the limitations of the road for ordinary vehicles is acknowledged, then it highlights the absurdity of HGVs manoeuvring safely. The developers even point out in their legal arguments that Horner Avenue is unsuitable for HGV journeys, which is why this greenfield site can't be used for employment land, they say. A bizarre contradiction worth your scrutiny. Houses are placed very close to the curb, as you know, and one front door is less than 2 meters from the curb. The dangers presented to pedestrians and road users are self-evident to all. Vague predictions of the number of lorry journeys was a key factor in the inspector's rejection of the previous appeal. And yet he wanted facts. And now the developers have not properly estimated the number of journeys because no account has been taken of the soil needed to be delivered by road for the massive acoustic battlements. They specify that it will come from an adjacent piece of land which is not even in the development red line. Are you going to allow this? Have a look at section 7.6, Kerry, of the construction plan to see the point. How many more life-threatening lorries are acceptable to you, and what else have planners failed to notice in this perfect application? Passage through Horner Avenue, a banksman will help passage through Horner Avenue once lorries arrive there. It's an inadequate precaution, but at least an acknowledgement of the hazards. But what about the hazards at the construction hold-off site, where lorries will reverse off without a banksman and go through all of the curvy, wiggly roads, all through those estates? This is not a perfect application. It's not one that will promote safety or well-being of our very angry residents. It won't even be a pleasant place to live. Just perfect.
Thank you for that. I now call upon Philip Rawle, who is the applicant, and I would like to once again remind members of the public that they need to remain quiet. I do have the power to clear the room, which I will do if you don't remain quiet. Thank you. Okay, so you have 5 minutes and you will be given a warning 30 seconds towards the end of that. Okay, thank you.
I am the agent for this planning application on behalf of Vistry Homes and Greenlight Developments. The applicants and I support the contents of the officer's report, and the presentation was put to you this evening. Members will note that a previous application on the site for a similar residential scheme was dismissed only at appeal 14 months ago in May 2023. This previous appeal decision is a significant material consideration in the determination of this current planning application. It informed the applicant what issues it had to address to gain planning permission. The previous appeal decision confirmed the following key matters. The principle of residential development on the site is acceptable. The Staffordshire Design Guide is guidance only and does not preclude minor access ways serving larger developments. On-street parking in Horner Avenue won't unacceptably interfere with the movement of car traffic arising from the development. The emergency access arrangements for the development would be acceptable and also incorporate a suitable secondary pedestrian access. And the proposed mitigation scheme would adequately address the additional effect of the development on the A38 Woodend Lane junction. The previous appeal was refused because the inspector had two concerns. Firstly, access into the site and the conflict with number 52 Horner Avenue. The appeal inspector was not happy with the occupiers of number 52 reversing off their driveway onto the new access junction into the site. Secondly, more detail is required on the construction management plan. The appeal inspector was not saying a solution could not be found, but he wasn't comfortable leaving this to a condition without the details being agreed between the applicant and the County Highway Authority. Unlike with the previous planning application, neither the County Highway Authority nor National Highways raise any objections to this current scheme. The applicant has worked hard and addressed all of their concerns. They agree that the inspector's concerns have been met. The reasons for refusal have been addressed in the following ways. Firstly, the applicants have entered into a legal agreement with the owners of number 52 Horner Avenue to acquire this property. This new position now allows the driveway to be reconfigured so there is no conflict between the driveway and the new access junction into the site. Secondly, regarding the construction management plan, following extensive negotiations with County Highway Authority, the applicants have submitted a new construction method statement. The document confirms main access egress to the site for construction traffic, site staff and visitors will be from Horner Avenue. All contractors and suppliers to the site will be legally restricted as to part of their contracts to a maximum delivery vehicle size of 10 metres in length and 2.5 metres in width. Each contractor will enter into a contract and will be given a specific pre-booked time slot to access the site, so deliveries are staggered. There will be financial implications for all contractors, suppliers, if there is a breach of the contract. This will be reinforced with a requirement to call ahead to dedicated banks men on the site who will be in constant communication with delivery drivers to ensure compliance with delivery schedules. The dedicated banks men will meet all delivery vehicles at the junction of Worthington Road and Horner Avenue. A key issue that came out of the previous appeal was what happens if a delivery vehicle misses its pre-booked slot. The applicant has included as part of this planning application a designed holding area on land in its ownership offshore drive for these delivery vehicles to wait until their delivery slot is rebooked. With the last planning application, there was a concern about public open space. However, this current planning application provides an acceptable level of on-site provision, so this issue has fallen away. Your officers, including highways officers, agree that this planning application addresses the reasons why the previous scheme was dismissed as appeal. Everyone involved in the planning process, including the local planning authority, must behave reasonably. The National Planning Practice Guidance tells us that it is unreasonable for a local planning authority to persist in objections to a scheme or elements of a scheme which an inspector has previously indicated to be acceptable. In this case, the inspector said he had concerns about two matters, and those have been addressed. Further advantage are clear and compelling. It will deliver affordable housing, helping local people who are currently priced out of the market to own their own homes. It will deliver a SIL payment of approximately £560,000. 25% will be passed on to the local community, some £140,000. It will also deliver various other Section 106 financial contributions, including education, to the tune of £1.62 million. We therefore respectfully request that members act on the guidance provided by the inspector and the professional views of their officers and grant planning permission this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that presentation. I now call upon the third speaker, who is Councillor Mike Wilcox, Ward Councillor for Fradley. You have 10 minutes to speak and will be given a warning 30 seconds towards the end of that 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, members. I'm going to give you a
quick potted history of the Horner Avenue application, if I may. Members, this application is like the proverbial bad penny that keeps turning up. Some of you may remember the first application that was submitted back in the summer of 2020. So here we are now in the summer of 2024, and the good residents of Bradley, along with myself and my fellow colleagues, are still fighting this dangerous and impractical application 4 years on. Hopefully tonight we will see an end to this and residents can return to some resemblance of normality. There was a time where this council, Staffordshire Highways, and the committee saw sense and refused the application back in 2021. So here we are again discussing a very similar application again in 2024. Hopefully, as it was in September 21, common sense will prevail. And let's be clear, members, it wasn't refused on a technicality, but on sound planning reasons based around highway concerns, going against our core policies of a council and not conforming to either this council's local plan or, for that matter, the Bradley Neighbourhood Plan. You would have thought that back in 2021, that would have been the end of the matter. But no, the applicant decided to appeal in 2022, and the appeal was subsequently heard a year later in May 2023. The appeal was an expensive exercise in May 2023 here at the council. We all gathered and put their case to the inspector. Following many weeks of uncertainty awaiting the decision, eventually we got the news that all reasonable people expected, which was the inspector dismissed the appeal. We foolishly all thought that would be the end of the saga, as we could not see how the applicant could be able to address many of the highway concerns or be able to safely construct a development without finding another route into the site. One more positive move is that members of this committee were able to visit the site a couple of months ago to see for yourselves the difficulties that exist in trying to develop this site for houses. Fundamentally, members, the land in question is in the Lichfield District Local Plan Strategy as employment land under Core Policy 1.7 employment land and not for residential development. Even the council's own economic development officer has objected to the scheme. So on that basis, Chair, the application should be thrown out. But putting that to one side, let's actually once again go through the application in detail and draw out the many reasons why this application, like the previous application, should be refused. So what's different? Well, the developer will, it seems, go to any lengths to get the agreed, even the relocation of a car park in a garage of one of the existing properties on Horner Avenue, as well as proposing to put forward a new separate construction holding site located right by residential homes on Shore Drive, where we believe lorries containing materials will wait until their allotted time before moving onto the site. We believe this location of the holding site is both inappropriate and dangerous, as there are many children who live on Shore Close, and parents and children will have to deal with lorries turning or reversing back into the busy carriageway on Common Lane. The applicant has said that there will be an area that will be able to hold up to 40 vehicles per day. 40 vehicles going through a very built-up residential area. Therefore, we believe other vehicles will park up either on Common Lane or use the Sterling Retail Centre car park, which is already a capacity serving the busy and vibrant centre. And businesses there have commented already about losing trade at their customers' car park. So to get onto the site, contractors will be given a pre-booked time slot, and a dedicated banksman or men will meet these vehicles at the T-junction with Worthington Road and Horner Avenue, and presumably walk them through to the site. So let's imagine, members, that a contractor carrying materials arrives early, or for that matter, arrives late, as we all know how reliable the A38 is on a daily basis. So will they be turned away? And if so, where do they go? On your site visit, members, you will have seen the narrowness of many of the roads around the site, particularly Horner Avenue, Ward Close and Worthington Road, with its centre island acting as a traffic calming measure. It will be mayhem, with vehicles not being able to turn around and therefore driving further into a densely populated residential area, looking for somewhere to turn around and head back to the holding area. The applicant knows there is likely to be traffic building up at the junctions, so they've suggested having a temporary traffic orders in place from the junctions with Worthington Road to the site access, and a second temporary order to restrict vehicles parking along Shore Drive between the junction of Common Lane and the vehicle holding area. The order will not allow any parking by residents or visitors to Horner Avenue. So the impact will be that you will have to carry your own shopping from the designated car parking area where they've given 12 spaces that is being suggested to your home. If you are elderly or infirmed, again, you'll have to walk to get to your own homes, and this is likely to last up to 3 years. So who will monitor and enforce these traffic orders when they are not adhered to? Certainly not the developer, or for that matter, the highways, and we know all too well the performance of our own enforcement here at LDC. My advice to residents would be to move out completely, because the disruption will be intolerable to bear for everyone, either living or visiting Fradley. Another alteration to Horner Avenue is to amend the current block paved ramps on all sides of the traffic calming feature to a standard tarmac construction. Given the proposed increase in traffic volumes, this is madness, as we would argue that the traffic calming measures were put there and installed for the very reason as a safety measure, to slow vehicles down. Removing them will make the T-junction even more dangerous, as there will be nothing to indicate to motorists to slow down. Also, the red brick area means no parking, as it's a turning circle. By removing them, there will be no deterrent to stop motorists parking on the actual junction. The inspector at the appeal importantly concluded, and I quote, "The width of the Horner Avenue carriageway, its raised table for traffic calming and footways along part of the highway meant that it shared the characteristics of a minor access way, as described in Staffordshire County Council's Residential Design Code. This document suggests that minor access ways are particularly suitable for low to medium density." However, it does go on to say that it is only guidance and does not specifically preclude them from larger developments. In fact, this is just a play on words. Horner Avenue is a minor access way when turning from the T-junction, and as such, the current structure of the road will only support a further 19 houses. Fradley Parish Council commissioned an independent report by consultants who also confirmed in 2 separate reports that Horner Avenue is a minor access road leading to a minor access way. In fact, government set out what each clarification of the road can accommodate and the characteristics associated with it. Local government, i.e. the county council, can reclassify roads, but they still must meet the requirements of the specific type of road. In this case, given the lack of payments and the fact that the payment is less than 2 metres, means that the road is classified as a minor access way. This is really important, members, when you're looking at the safety of pedestrians and residents. I would argue that this type of minor access road is not suitable for the additional traffic volumes that will be created if we allow this road to be used for access to the new development. We also note that the visit by highways happened some 4 years ago. Obviously, conditions have changed, particularly in regard to numbers of vehicles, now given that children have grown up and have their own cars. Chair, there is in fact 30 conditions that the applicants expect to conform with, and we know this will not happen. And when it doesn't, who will enforce these? And do we have the capacity here at Lichfield to monitor these conditions? I'm afraid to say I don't think we have. Even the Highways Authority have stated that the application is largely a resubmission of the previous planning application. So why have they now decided to change their views and remove their objections? Finally, Chair, and very importantly, we cannot and should not ignore the real concerns of not only residents, but businesses and elected bodies who have responded to the numerous iterations of this application. The developer has seemed hell-bent on delivering 109 properties at any cost, with little or no respect for the existing community of Fradley. The residents in the vicinity of this development, should it go ahead, will have years of disruption and will undoubtedly affect their well-being and daily life. Members, you can see by the turnout this evening how passionate the folk of Fradley are about this application. For far too long, Fradley has had to take a greater number of homes than anywhere else in the district, and they have done so with great dignity and made newcomers welcome to the village. But there does come a time, which is now, when we have to say enough is enough. It's also, members, extremely important that we protect our employment land that we have identified in our local plan. We want new jobs, we want new homes where families can grow and thrive, but we have to ensure this is done at the right locations, which have been identified within the district's local plan. As elected members, we must always do what we can to protect and support those who we represent. They put their trust in us to do the right thing. I implore you tonight to do the right thing and reject this application and let the residents have their lives back.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. So I now turn over to the members for any questions that they may have for officers. Okay, Councillor Cross, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm surprised that Staffs County Council has included a condition or asked for a condition in this recommendation for the block paving on Horner Avenue to be lifted to protect it. There's no sort of indication that it will be reinstated. But more important than that, there's block paving on the roundabout, which is Turnbull Road linking with Common Lane, which has always been a disaster for the last 20 years it's been there. And Staffs County Council ignored it by saying there's never been an accident. There has been several accidents on it, but nothing serious, fortunately. But it is so important to remove the block paving in Horner Avenue. Why is it not just as important to move it on that roundabout?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Councillor Cross. I will put a wrong that's right there in terms of what's been said. The ramp, block paved ramp, as you come off Worthington to Horner, is not being removed. It's never been proposed to be removed. The construction management plan and the applicant have stated they will change the blocks on the up ramps to tarmac. The level will still be there. There will still be a traffic calming feature. The request is because of the heavy load of the axle of a lorry will destroy the block when it hits the up ramp. Therefore, we have requested for maintenance purposes during construction that the block is changed to tarmac. It's as simple as that. So they're not being removed and the traffic calming feature will stay put if the development is built.
Okay, thank you. Yep, Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at all these contributions, which is a bit of a teaser to everybody to follow along with this, which amounts to about 1,626,000, plus another 500 under the section 106, which 25% would go to Fradley Parish Council. That's a big tempting thing for everybody to look at and say, well, we need that. We need the infrastructure in Fradley. We haven't got it. Some of this is going to go for health contributions. We don't have a health. We've had all this development over the years, last 20 years that I know of, and we've never had a health facility built. We have all the promises for every developer to do this, and it never happens. I see now we're going to have some work done on the A38, but that's only if Staffs County Council go along with it to do it when the day comes. We've had that before with Evans and Evans, and it's never happened. This is all just almost like bribery to accept this. The school travel plan, we've fought and fought and fought to get the 5,000 from LDC for Bellway. We've only just got it a few weeks ago to get the bus service, the A38, up and running. That should have been up and running long ago. And then we got the residential travel plan and monitoring fee. What's the residential travel plan? All this money, when you look at it, it's all going to Staffs County Council. They're going to handle this. They're going to control this totally. There's nothing coming to LDC or Fradley here that's being mentioned here. We've just pushed to one side again. I've taken quite an extra interest in this proposal due to the level of public interest, mainly of all the people that live around me. I live quite close to it, and all these people here tonight live quite close to me also. And because I'm a resident living close by to this proposal and an elected councillor for this ward, I will be affected like all the residents that has raised their various objections. I've taken an objective view to all the material matters since I was invited by LDC to attend the pre-app meeting with the developers back in August 2019, when I strongly objected to using Horner Avenue and Ward Close as access exit points. But this is now due to the parish council at that time refusing to allow use of a small parcel of now derelict and overgrown land given to them by this developer several years ago. And I believe that had the parish council agreed to engage with the developers at that time, as they have been doing with others, alternative solutions could have been found to avoid using Horner Avenue. The principle of development is clear, as is a clear benchmark for consideration set by the inspector in last year's appeal. Paragraph 5.2 outlines those considerations. I have carefully assessed them and consider that they are satisfactorily met. But if we refuse this application, is at risk the applicant could go to the planning inspector under appeal, and the inspector find that all his previous concerns is now being met and would therefore have to approve it, all being at a substantial unnecessary cost to LDC. Local feeling must be taken in perspective. All these people's feelings. We've really got to consider this seriously. But overall, the proposals have met all aspects, including the primary one of the highway impacts being fully addressed to the satisfaction of the County Highways Authority and Highways England. Conditions regulate this in a clear way. The development delivers housing and financial contributions to much needed community infrastructure. Any contrary view, as delivered by Councillor Wilcox and Councillor Glenbarn of Fradley Parish Council, runs counter to objectivity of sound planning principles. As all the previous concerns of Staffs County Highways, Highways England and the planning inspector has now been met, I unfortunately feel we have no alternative or grounds to refuse this application. Or, let me finish please, or the officer's recommendation for approval of this application subject to conditions and legal agreement. However, I would like to refuse this application consistent with my principles put to the first pre-app meeting back in August 2019. But I cannot find any legal grounds left to do so. And with the amount of 1.6 million towards our much needed infrastructure and A38 junction, plus the extra CIL of approximately 560 of monies, which approximately 25% would go directly to the parish council for local needs, and the likely chance the inspector will approve it if this goes to appeal at much cost to LDC. However, with all that in mind, I propose refusal of this application.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. We're not quite at that point yet. I want to give everyone a chance to have a speak and question the officers. So the next person speaking, Councillor Checkland.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I spent quite a long time going through this, so I'm going to go with the order that I reviewed it when I was reading the paperwork, if I may. Horner Avenue, minor access way. It is a small cul-de-sac. People moved into it thinking it was a small cul-de-sac. It's designated, the land that's been suggested for housing. I think the housing development itself could work on that plot of land, but you can't get through it through Horner Avenue. It just makes no sense whatsoever. It's contrary to the local plan. It's contrary to the local neighbourhood plan. Sorry, contrary to the district plan. Highways concerns. To say there's no highways concerns in relation to the size of that entrance gets me. Councillor Wilcox covered a number of points there in relation to the parking area for 12 vehicles and carrying stuff from one place to another. But it's only operational during the hours when the site is open and working. So if you're on shifts coming back from hospital as a nurse, and you finish at 6 o'clock in the morning, you park your car in the road, and then you've got to get up at 9 o'clock in the morning to go and move it to a car park. And if you've done late or any occasion, if you go on a holiday, where do you leave your car then? I just can't see any practical aspect to saying that this can possibly work. In relation to human rights, the human rights of the individuals that live in that road, I think, have to be taken into consideration. It's not necessarily down to the views or the noise impact or the rest of it. We're talking about a 3-year disruption of people's. They have a right to respect for their private and family life. I think this order suggests that's not going to be taken into account. The access, how do bin lorries get? That's covered in one of the conditions later on. The Grampian policy makes reference to the changes to the A38. The additional traffic going on to the A38, I don't think is a relevant point. It suggests 4 lorries a day. Well, I've spoken to 2 builder friends of mine. It's 25 HGVs per house. So it's 2 years of HGVs. They also mentioned 200 vans per house. after visit as well to do fitting work and the rest of it. I just can't see the logistics. The site can work, but I just don't believe it can work through there. Yeah, the enforcement hours for the traffic are 9 till 5. So presumably the car park is operational from 8 till 5. How do you move? I just can't see it. I don't think this is a reasonable application.
Just like to bring in officers to respond to some of these questions now, please.
Bear with, sorry, I just wanted to clarify that the traffic regulation order, and Mark might be able to back me up here, it doesn't stop people parking on their drives. It just stops people parking in the street. Is that correct, Mark? Yeah, that's correct. Just to clarify that point. And also the construction management plan was 40 deliveries over 2 weeks with a maximum of 4 per day. Just wanted to clarify that.
That's all right. Thank you for the response. Councillor Wilcox now, questions please for the officers. Thank you.
It's not working, is it? I've got a quick question for the highways officer here tonight. Does he agree that the assumptions that have been made that would have undoubtedly changed since the site visit that was made in 2020, some 4 years ago, therefore we cannot place too much emphasis on outdated information that has been produced for this committee, particularly in relation to the traffic information and the number of vehicles and their usage? I'd like to hear Mr. Evans' thoughts on this, please. I know I've got something else I'd like to say after.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to respond, officer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'll make an admission. I made a mistake on my formal reply. I will blame the technology, but it's the Muggins here that used the technology that made the mistake. Hands up. The way our technology works is we have a piece of software whereby you input a site visit date. When we've had, I dread to think how many reconsultations we've had, the software generates the next reply and locks out the previous one. I've just failed to change the date of site visits. It's as simple as that. So yes, first ones were back in, I actually did the pre-app site visits back in 29, as Councillor mentioned previously. In terms of site visits I've done, I've never done them at weekends, to be brutally honest. I've done them in the working week, Monday to Friday, which is when people are, I've done them in the day and I've done them in the evenings. I can't remember a meeting with Kerry once, gone 6 p.m. I live in Stafford. I went home via Fradley, gone 6 p.m. and did a site visit then, out of hours as such, when people were at home. So I've done them different times of the day over the years. I've done site visits this year. So hands up, that's my technology mistake in terms of my formal reply showing a site visit, but I have done multiple ones. First one back in 2019 when we did the pre-application with the developer. In terms of what's changed from a traffic point of view, if you're referring to volume of traffic, that's catered and dealt with in the transport assessment that is accompanying the application. So that is a technical document, given the size of development, that is agreed between us and the applicant due to the size and quantum of development, e.g. it's over 50 houses, they are required to provide that document as part of the planning process. That documentation we have updated since the first application to what we now have in front of us. So in terms of the documentation, if this answers your question, I'm more than happy to take subsequent ones. We are happy with the documentation and the updated documentation based on the latest application, which was 2022. So I'm happy to carry on with the conversation and the questions.
Yeah, back to you, Councillor Wilcox. Thank you.
visits and then you is allocated in our district.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Before we get a seconder, I'd like to have more questions, please, on this. And I've already got Councillor Powell in the queue for questions. Thank you, Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, first of all, to say I totally agree with Councillor Checkland and what he said, and with Councillor Wilcox, both of them. This piece of road is totally unsuitable for the sort of vehicles they're proposing to build this development. They're talking over 100 houses. That's an awful lot of stuff you're going to be moving around. But more than that, when it comes to county highways, and I'm sorry about this, Mark, but you're not actually looking to the future. If there is development there, the number of vehicles that are going to be going in and out is still going to be enormous. The residents are still going to be having a disturbed time. And I wondered whether you'd actually done any forward projections with the numbers that are being proposed as a model as to how you foresee the traffic flow and what you're going to do with it. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to respond, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of traffic modelling, there's an exercise that's been done, which obviously has been touched on upon in presentations, and even the planning office has mentioned it. For example, the junction at Hilliard's Cross. So in terms of the site will generate traffic. So many units per house, put it in layman's terms. So those figures have been put in the transportation document that is submitted with the plan application. We have reviewed that, and obviously as part of the mitigation in the first application, which has rolled into the second application, we were concerned from a traffic point of view that the proposal would have an impact on the Hilliard's Cross junction and the movements of traffic accessing the county council's roads and accessing the A38 trunk road. The difference this time around from the original application was, I think we all are aware how busy the Hilliard's Cross junction is. Okay. Lichfield District Council and the County Council are trying to come up with a holistic approach to solve a bigger problem. That's going on in the background, but we don't have that solution right now. So the applicant in the first application, the 21 application, we suggested a financial contribution rather than a scheme to mitigate their impact. They were showing they had an impact on the Hilliard's Cross junction, for example. We as the County Council with the district were trying to pool monies to get a bigger scheme to make that junction better, along with the A38 trunk road operator. When we went to appeal on that scheme, the inspector dismissed and said we were wrong by going down that avenue, pardon the pun, going down that line. The inspector said we should have accepted the developers, the applicants' suggested mitigation scheme that they'd come up with. We accepted the inspector's decision that we were wrong in that aspect. The applicant, on the second applicant, has put forward that mitigation scheme, which the inspector said passed the tests through the appeal and should be implemented. So they've done that again. We've had our knuckles wrapped by the inspector saying we were wrong to go that way in the previous application. So we've gone the way the inspector has told us to go and accepted that scheme. So what will happen in terms of the impact in the wider network is the applicant has proposed a mitigation scheme for the Hilliard's Cross junction, which we have safety audited ourselves because it's on our road network. So we are comfortable that it's deliverable. We are taking the stance that the planning inspector said we should have accepted it the first time round. Therefore, that is the future mitigation of the impact on the wider network, if that answers part of that question. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that response. Before I carry on with the list of speakers, I'd just like to remind members to speak directly into the microphone because the overflow room missed the move to refuse, which we will come back to. Okay, so just to remind everybody to speak clearly and make sure the mic's on before they start. The next speaker I've got on my list is Councillor Mears. Councillor Mears, thank you.
Good evening, thank you. I can see how contentious this application is, and temperatures are running high regarding it. I've read through the documents in detail and spoken to residents and other councillors as well. To get myself as educated on this matter as possible, it seems that either way, we're damned if we do or we're damned if we don't. This site is earmarked for development either way. It's earmarked currently for employment. Although this application is for housing, either way, there'll be a period of construction, whether it's employment, industrial units or housing, one or the other will have to be built. There will be construction traffic either way. And whether it goes...
Could the members of the public please be quiet so we can conduct this hearing properly? Thank you.
And either way, there is only one way in. There is only that current way of access. So as I see it, in the medium term, there'll be construction traffic, but long term, we need to look at the longer scale spectrum of this development. If it's residential, then there'll be lighter traffic going in and out. It'll be cars, motorcycles, it'll be much lighter weight traffic. Whereas if we go for the employment opportunity for industrial units, it'll be lorries, deliveries, vans. You'll have commercial traffic going in and out, as well as the traffic from those that are employed there. So you could be looking at double the amount of traffic because there won't be people living there. It'll be business. And the thing is, there doesn't seem to be any restriction on the hours of business that would run there. So I think looking at what's best for the residents long term is what we should be thinking about. There are already job opportunities elsewhere in the district, and there are other areas and other industrial sites that are being expanded. I don't see that this site would necessarily be a huge benefit to that area of development for the district. This site is already next to a housing estate. It's penned in by housing. You'd be putting like by like, which is what we as a district are encouraged to do. Everything in this document meets the inspector's criteria for approval. We've been categorically told that we cannot go against the inspector's recommendation for approval unless we can come up with some solid planning reason as to why the inspector is wrong. Now, it's already gone through one planning application. It's already gone through an appeal. It's come back to committee again, but this time it meets all the criteria. Although I can fully understand the potential upset that it can cause to all the residents, as councillors here, I can't see how we can refuse it. And I think the other option of industrial units has got the potential to be far worse.
Thank you, Councillor Mears. Thank you. Can everybody be quiet, please? Thank you. Any officers got a response to that one? Thank you.
If I just may say, and I will be kicked virtually under the table of a planning officer if I'm wrong on this, the local plan allocation, I don't know if you've got your red dot, Kerry, that you could wave on the screen for the employment land to the south is accessed off Common Lane Island, the third arm off the island. You come off the island into the site. That's a private road. That's not public highway. And I believe, if I'm right, the employment allocation, if that site came forward with the planning application, would be accessed off the private road through the employment land at the moment. They wouldn't come off, or I think the local plan states they would come off the existing employment access. Is that right, Kerry?
So just to clarify, it is allocated in the allocations plan as employment land. So that could come forward as employment units. That's what the local plan wants to happen. However, what we have before us is this development that you have to make a decision on tonight. In terms of the other access, the developer has not been able to achieve that access. It's owned by other people. So that is not in front of us. In an ideal world, I would wave a magic wand and that's what would happen. But in the real world, that's not happening. The planning application before us this evening is with the access along Horner Avenue.
Thank you for the response. The next councillor to speak is Councillor Marshall, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think on the face of it, it could be seen that we've sort of been painted into a corner here because obviously the applicant has mitigated or is attempting to mitigate the concerns outlined in the inspector's report, where obviously he upheld the decision made by us, but he did come up with ways of alleviating those problems. So as has been pointed out, we probably are struggling to find valid reasons for refusal. On the other hand, of course, I think if I look at page 34 under residential amenity, 15.1, policy BE1 of the local plan strategy states that development should have a positive impact upon amenity by avoiding development which causes disturbance through unreasonable traffic generation, noise, light, dust, fumes, or other disturbance. Now, to me, those three lines in our report seem to highlight many of the issues that we could well be facing were this application to go ahead. And I think it would have a very serious impact on residential amenity, which is, I think, is one of the reasons why we're seeing quite a, if not a record turnout, a very high turnout of local residents here this evening, because they too are very concerned by that. I think that creating a thoroughfare on a very, very minor road, which was never intended for use by large numbers of vehicles, and let's face it, 109 houses, has the capacity to generate at least, I would say, 150 vehicles outwards, egress and ingress. And that cannot be overlooked and considered to be a minor issue. When we went on the site visit, which incidentally in May was one of the few site visits we've done in recent years, and I think was incredibly valuable and did highlight the extreme importance of seeing some of these areas in the flesh rather than just seeing photo slides of them. I was actually quite surprised and a little bit shocked and slightly saddened, I suppose, to think that Lichfield residents could be subjected to an application, a development, which is going to create a lot of traffic and without a doubt, a great deal of disturbance over at least 3 years. And once the development is built, that is only the start of it, of course. The development phase is one thing, but when it's in full use with all the residents in place, that's quite another. I am very concerned by this, if I'm honest with you. I don't live in Fradley, but if I was living on Horner Avenue and I wasn't on the council and I was simply someone who had to look out of my kitchen window every morning and watch huge amounts of traffic going past, I too probably would be joining the people here this evening at the back of this room. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Vernon next, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. During the talk given by Kerry, the first note I made on my scrap of paper was Horner Avenue narrow. And when I looked at the pictures of Horner Avenue, I just thought, how are those people going to cope? You know, they bought those houses as an investment. That is their castle, to live a quiet life. And suddenly that is all going to be destroyed by all the vehicles that are going to be passing, as Councillor Marshall said, going outwards and back. But when Kerry said there will be a parking restriction during the day. What is the definition of parking? Does that mean no stopping? Because what does a young mum do that wants to get children into the car, put them in the car seat, put a buggy in, or an elderly person that has been helped out of the car to go back into the house because they can't walk properly? So I just wonder how they will cope. And I have to say, I'm so glad I don't live on Horner Avenue. I would be distraught at what is planned. And the other question I'd like to ask, when they talk about lorry movements 4 a day, is that 2 in, 2 out, or 4 in, 4 out? Because suddenly that number's doubled, because any lorry that goes into the site has to come back out again. And the one comment I'd just make, if it's used for commercial purposes, why couldn't access be given for the residential site through Common Lane? Surely some arrangement could be made. The person that owns Common Lane is obviously going to sell it to make a profit for access for industrial use. Well, why not sell it and have an access for the residential use? But I share the views of Councillor Wilcox, Chetland, Powell and Marshall. I would not want to be living on Horner Avenue.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Councillor.
Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon. Can I ask for an officer's response to that, please?
Yes, just in terms of parking, I'll say it again. The restrictions would not restrict people parking on their own drives. It would stop people parking in the street. So if somebody was getting, sorry, could you be quiet, please? There are people trying to listen online as well. That would not stop somebody pulling up and getting a baby out of a car or what have you. And there's obviously also the banksman in place as well. The lorry movements would be a maximum of 4 per day, as set out in the construction management plan.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to pick up, Councillor Vernon, on something you just said in your last point, just to make people aware. If the access came off Common Lane along the private road, because it's not public highway, into the current industrial estate for housing, just to make people aware, the County Council would not adopt the housing estate and would not look after the roads because there is no formal connection to a public highway. There is a connection to a private road. You cannot go from a private road to a public road back to a private road. It has to be a continuous connection. So in that example that you give, I have no problem with that concept at all. But any resident who bought a house on that estate would then be entering into a contract with a maintenance management company to look after the footpaths, to look after the roads, to look after the drainage, to look after street lighting, etc., etc. From a highway point of view, no problem with that concept whatsoever. But just to give you an example of what that would entail, it would mean each resident would have to have an additional pot of money taken from them each year to look after the infrastructures, where obviously coming through Horner Avenue at the moment, the Highway Authority would adopt the roads, the street lighting, the footpaths, and look after them in perpetuity.
Chair, could I just come back on that? Is it not possible for councils to adopt roads and take them over?
Yes, we have powers, but we have to connect to an adopted highway. That wouldn't be that case coming off a private road.
Thank you for the response. The next councillor, Councillor Ashton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Marshall, for making the point about residential amenity. And in this case, I think residential amenity applies not only to the 3 years of construction, but also to the time afterwards, when, as Councillor Mears has rightly pointed out, it is not just the, whatever it is, 1.5 cars per 109 houses. It's the Amazon delivery vans, it's the Deliveroos, it's all the rest of the traffic which is associated with the residential development nowadays. And Horner Avenue has basically then almost trebled in size without the road itself trebling in size. So I think we have actually a valid reason in that we are going against policy BE1 of the local plan. In residential. This is my opinion. I am new to the vice chairmanship of this committee. I may be wrong, but this is my belief. However, in the event that this application is approved, I would like to add an additional condition, and that is to do with parking. We've been told that the contractor will provide the developer will provide another 12 parking spaces. I believe that to be totally inadequate. And it does not take into account the vehicles that the workers on the site will use to come to and from the site while it is being constructed. I therefore propose that an additional condition be added that the contractors should provide on-site parking sufficient for any needs of the residents, in addition to those vehicles used by workers to go to and from the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Officer's response, thank you.
Yeah, it's just to mention that the contractor's parking is noted in the construction management plan and provided within the site.
Okay, thank you. The next councillor to speak, Councillor Powell. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This really seems to be a problem about the access into the place. So we've got one side which is private, but if it was going to be an industrial estate, you'd get the access to it. On the other side, we've got the residents whose lives are going to be made a misery by this development if it happens. And you say then the roads will not be adopted. Well, couple of points. First of all, unadopted roads are not that uncommon, particularly in the ward I represent, and life goes on. It doesn't all fall into dust. And secondly, surely it would be of benefit to encourage the developer to seek again to get access along the side, the common lane side, but to make sure the roads are adopted if you want them adopted, and this is for Mark, then when it's developed, all you have to do is then just put a minor extension from the road into the estate from the side that is adopted, and thus the roads are adopted. And I don't really see what the trouble is. I know that would solve it for everybody. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. I've been listening quite quietly to all of the concerns, and I understand the concerns, but I've got to remind members they've got to consider the application before them. That's the important point. The access they're considering is off Horner Avenue. It's not off Common Road. You've got to consider the application before you. All discussion about private roads, adopted roads is irrelevant. Please remember that.
Okay, thank you for that. So is there anybody else that wishes to ask a question? No? Okay, no other questions? Okay, so I would like to ask Councillor Cross, because he no, Councillor Cross proposed first. I want to know if he wants to pursue with that. Yeah. Councillor Cross would like to pursue his refusal. Move over.
Yeah, or you can give to Councillor Wilcox because she has reasons.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I propose refusal of this application, mainly because I was involved with the neighbourhood plan. There was a lot of work went into that, many years work and a lot of money spent on it, and it was approved by this council, fortunately. And this does not comply with that. What's the point of our neighbourhood plans if planners are not going to consider them on application, or the developers? But I was happy for what Councillor Wilcox conditions she's put forward, and I'd like to include her conditions in my refusal or pass it over to her.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cross. Can I just confirm you mean local plan or neighbourhood plan?
The neighbourhood plan. Yes.
Also contrary to BE1.
It's
Thank-
also contrary to B1.
Thank you for that confirmation. Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. If everybody could just give us a couple of minutes just to have a little. Yeah. Oh. Okay, thank you for your patience. Councillor Wilcox, I'd just like to ask if you could withdraw your refusal so that we can go ahead with Councillor Cross's.
Which I think,
Yeah.
through you, Chair, so we've got two proposals for refusal, which we can't vote on too. So I'm just trying to ascertain if those two councillors with agreement, in essence, will go into one. So Councillor Cross was the first person to move refusal. We don't have any seconders as yet. What Councillor Cross has just said is he has his reasons and he's happy to include the reasons that Councillor Wilcox has also come up with. What I'm asking is, with that in mind, is Councillor Wilcox happy to withdraw her reasons and we will pursue Councillor Cross's proposal, including all your reasons as well. And we'll see if Councillor Ashton is happy, because he's mentioned about policy BE1, to get into one proposal for refusal, which we then can pursue a seconder and start going to votes. So that is what I'm asking. If not, I will be requesting two seconders. We will be having two votes to see which refusal actually goes through or not. And I can see, as parish councillor, you understand what I mean, because we need to ascertain what will become the substantive motion for refusal. So that's what I'm asking. If neither of them wish to withdraw, then we'll need to pursue separate votes for each.
Councillor Wilcox, please. Yeah. If you could just state your two. Oh.
Could you please read out exactly what the motion is?
We will do.
Word for word that we're
Yeah,
going
we
to
just
vote
come into
for.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilcox, could you just please read out your two reasons again, just for the record? Thank you.
So firstly,
Yes, I'm happy with that, Chair. Thank you.
Sorry, just to jump in there, in terms of the minor access way not suitable, do we have any local plan policies to attach to that? Or are we, just to confirm, are we just basing it all on the Staffordshire County Council guidance?
Yeah, it's a reference to B1. BE1, sorry.
Okay. Councillor Marshall, please.
I think that ship has sailed. Sorry, I think that ship has sailed. Thank you. All I was going to say was I think it was almost a slip of the tongue with Councillor Sonia Wilcox when she said she was proposing refusal. I think really what she meant to say was she was seconding at the time. Yeah, and I think that caused a little bit of confusion. So I was just trying to clarify that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so are we ready to move to a vote, or do we need to have a few minutes?
Sorry.
Councillor Anketel.
Is it too late to speak against the motion? Okay.
Go on.
Sorry. So I am just clarifying what reasons for refusal I have. So the first reason is the land is allocated in the district strategy and is not in compliance with the district strategy, which seeks employment land on there. The second one was relating to the minor access way, not suitable for the access to the site because of the quantum of development, I'm guessing. And then where did BE1 come into that? Was that, or was that a separate reason?
Also mentioned by the Vice Chairman as well. Reference page 34 under 15 residential amenity. Policy B1, it states here of the local plan strategy states that development should have a positive impact on amenity by avoiding development which causes disturbance through unreasonable traffic generation, noise, light, dust, fumes, or other disturbance. I think that sentence, albeit a fairly long one, sums up a lot of the concerns which have been expressed here this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Marshall.
That's okay. So to confirm, that needs to go in with reason for refusal 2, which talks about the minor access way and the impacts of the access way on the occupants of Horner Avenue. Thank you. Sorry, it's important to clarify.
So with the indulgence of the chair, I just want to go through kind of how voting will work, because if you're not used to this or haven't seen it, it may be confusing. I know that there are 2 councillors in the audience will understand exactly what I'm saying. But in essence, we're going to have 2 votes now, and that's why I wanted to clarify and be transparent, because you may be wondering why. So in kind of decision-making speak, we have what's called a substantive motion already, which is the officer's recommendation. Okay, the first vote that I'm going to ask the committee to make is actually, are they happy with those reasons that Kerry has just clarified? And do they wish to amend and in essence replace that substantive motion with this new one for refusal? And I just want to make that clear, because you may think, oh, they voted refusal, that's it. They're not. The first vote is purely to replace that officer's recommendation with this new refusal recommendation. Once that is done, I'm going to ask the committee to vote again, actually, as that is now the recommendation. And that what we call that substantive motion. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify, make sure that's transparent. Okay, so please bear with us. I know it's 2 votes, but hopefully we will get through this quick. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go to the first vote. If you're happy with the reasons that have been stated and you want to
So it's make that the substantive motion.
to make that the substantive motion. Okay, so we're going.
So go for, ask for anybody
okay, yeah.
for actually making that, for those reasons for refusal and for.
Okay, so if anybody would like to vote for.
So just to clarify.
3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
It's 12.
12.
Yeah. It's up to you if you wish to vote.
I won't on this one,
Okay,
actually.
so
12,
that is nobody to go against, so that is carried. That becomes a substantive motion. Now we're going to vote to actually refuse the application.
And this was on the basis of the reasons that
Yes,
Kerry set
yes,
out.
yeah.
Okay, so that has been refused on the basis of those reasons with 12.
So it's
Oh, it's been, sorry.
agreed that
It's been agreed that that now becomes the substantive motion with 12 votes. So now we go to the vote to refuse.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's on those reasons.
On those reasons.
That Kerry read out.
Yeah, on those reasons that Kerry read out, we now go to the vote to refuse.
So this is to actually refuse
Refuse.
the application, just
Yeah.
to make that clear. So. or
Yeah,
refuse
all
it.
those for refusal, please raise your hand.
So anybody against? Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah. Anybody against?
And any
No,
abstentions?
and any sorry, one again.
Are you an abstention?
And one any abstentions?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Right,
one abstention. Okay.
So that application is refused and we can end that.
Okay, so that means that application 22/00106/FULM has been refused. Short break to clear the room before the next. Okay, could everybody take their seats, please? We're just getting ready to start. We are now live. Okay, welcome back to Planning Committee at Lichfield District Council. So we'll move to the next application, which is Land at Cricket Lane, Lichfield, Staffordshire, 23/01438/REMM, St John's. I would just like to remind you that this application is for reserved matters approval only. The principal and access has already been approved. And so now I'd like to pass over to the officers for the presentation, please.
Many thanks, Chair. So as you say, the application is for reserved matters approval for the employment area pursuant to condition 4 of the outline planning permission 18/01217/OUT FLM for the development of employment buildings under use classes B1, B2 and B8, hard and soft landscaping, including sustainable urban drainage systems, car parking provision and the formation of new pedestrian and vehicular access. The application includes details for the full discharge of condition 12 attached to the outline, which in respect of the master plan and design code compliance statement, and part discharge of the following conditions in relation to the employment area. Condition 9 relating to the construction environment management plan and habitat management plan. Condition 22, the landscape management plan. Condition 23, the surface water drainage strategy. Condition 24, the external lighting and noise mitigation, and condition 26, the noise and vibration mitigation. The applicant is St Modwen. So in total, 8 units would be developed, varying in size between circa 4,330 square meters up to 7,700 square meters, with a total provision of almost 45,000 square meters of flexible B1C, which is light industrial, B2 general industrial, and B8 warehouse and distribution. Just jumping around a little bit. So that's the aerial of the site there. I'm sure members will be familiar with it. Some photographs there. Photograph 1 broadly showing the location of the access. The access being subject to a separate application under 23/00901/FULM, which is for the installation of a new 3-armed signal control junction and associated access to land off London Road, which is approximately there, with associated landscaping, drainage and other infrastructure, which was approved the 22nd of May this year and provides vehicular access into the site. So the site forms part of a wider site, which is identified as a strategic development allocation, the south of Lichfield SDA, which is contained in the adopted Lichfield local plan. The SDA benefits from outline consent under reference 18/01217/OUT FLM, which was outline approval with all matters reserved except for access in respect of the construction of up to 520 dwellings and an area of up to 12.78 hectares for the provision of employment floor space under B1, B2 and B8 uses, with outline being approved 16th of December 2022. As the Chair has mentioned, this established the principle for development, as well as the overarching principles for the access. It's also important to clarify that the outline consent does not seek to define or limit the exact split or mix of the various employment use classes for the site. As such, this RM application has come forward in accordance with the remit of the outline application. Additionally, there is an absence of explicit policy requirement or restriction contained in the adopted local plan, which would otherwise limit or control a specific employment use class in the scheme. While the proposals would immediately lend themselves most clearly to a B8 use, it is important to note that the units are sufficiently flexible to be usable for the variety of employment uses covered by B1, B2 and B8. Ensuring the units are flexible is important. It will serve to achieve the economic aspirations of the district, being an attractive place to attract business. The units would include circa 2,000 square meters of office space as well, which reflects the diversity of employment opportunities possible. However, in order to provide comfort that the proposed development will offer a range and breadth of jobs, including skilled jobs, it is proposed that a condition be attached which requires the provision of an employment and skills plan, which will cover both the construction and operational phases of the development. In terms of relating applications to that which is before you today, I've already mentioned the access application. Another relating application is 23/01437/FUL, which is for the demolition of Ashbrook House and redevelopment into Employment Area Unit 2, which is that area there in the blue, that little triangle down there, which was also approved in May this year. So in terms of the layout, the units, as you can see, would generally be orientated in such a way that the main entrances and service yards would face towards the southeast, say for Unit 1, which has a more southerly orientation. This has been done with a view to providing additional noise attenuation qualities, and should provide additional protection for the future residential properties to the north, which would come forward as part of the remainder of the site, the residential element of the site. Members will also note a landscape bund, which is proposed to act as an additional buffer between the employment site and the prospective residential site to the north, offering screening, noise attenuation, and general amenity properties. So I just chose one of the units sort of at random, but also because it had the landscape bund next to it, which isn't terribly the image is sort of viewing it from a bit of a distance here, but the proposed units would feature a cladding system with a gradual transition from a darker brown to a lighter grey at the roof ridge to mitigate visual impact, with the corners emphasised with an anthracite cladding colour. The combination of energy efficient measures proposed would result in a scheme achieving an excellent rating in the BREEAM certification process. In terms of the scale, sort of shows it. So in terms of the scale, all units would be 12.5 metres in height to parapet level, with the units set back from the prospective residential units to the north, which was considered to reduce amenity and overbearingness concerns. Also to note, elsewhere in the district, units up to 15 metres have been approved. So this is slightly below where units approved elsewhere. In terms of the aforementioned landscaping bund, in addition to the aforementioned landscaping bund, I should say, supplementary planting is proposed elsewhere, which would provide additional screening, noise attenuation, and biodiversity properties. Members will also note a supplementary report included as a late item, which just provides some minor amendments or clarification to some of the conditions contained in the committee report, as well as a clarification in respect to a short section of the report relating to county highways, where it erroneously said that they had offered no comments when in fact they had offered no objection. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. We've got one speaker on this, so I'd now like to bring in Mark Fadden, who is the applicant. Thank you. You have 5 minutes to speak, and you will be given a warning when you get to 30 seconds towards the end of that. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. This Reserved Matters application seeks to bring forward the employment area within Cricket Lane Strategic Development Allocation, which is required by policy Lichfield 6, the local plan to deliver approximately 12 hectares of employment land, comprising B1, B2 and B8 uses. To provide certainty with regards to the design, we have also submitted information to discharge related conditions regarding noise impact, lighting, design, surface water drainage and biodiversity net gain. The outline permission established the principles of land use, quantum, and secured various mitigation measures, including improvements to Swinfen Island, bus services, and off-site highways improvements. Since outline permission was granted in December 22, the applicant has worked collaboratively with the council and the applicant for the adjacent part of the Cricket Lane SDA on the residential side to ensure that proposals are appropriately designed and technically sound. This included developing a master plan and design code as required by the outline permission, which established the parameters for layout, massing, and principles for detailed design. The master plan design code was developed in tandem with the residential proposals to ensure that there's pedestrian connectivity between the residential and employment areas, green infrastructure and surface water drainage coordination. The council approved the master plan and design code last September, and your urban design officer agrees that the proposals are in accordance with the approved master plan and design code. The proposals accord with the 12.5 metre ridge height limits, which this committee previously sought to attach to the outline permission. An enhanced office frontage is proposed at the site entrance, with a landscape buffer along London Road in excess of 10 metres, which recognises the importance of London Road as a gateway into the city. The amenity of residents within the Cricket Lane residential area has been considered from the outset. There's a 600-metre long landscape bund, which is proposed adjacent to the residential area, including mature tree planting. This application is supported by a noise and lighting assessment, which demonstrates how the development will be compatible with the adjacent residential development, and this has been accepted by your environmental health officer. The proposals will result in the following benefits. Around 250 jobs during construction, including work experience placements, apprenticeships and constructions careers events, which will be developed as part of the employment and skills plan, which has been referred to as a planning condition. It will support around 820 full-time jobs once operational, including a range of occupations from entry level through to higher skilled professional and technical roles. The development would generate approximately 14.8 million of business rates over a 20-year period, approximately half of which would be retained by the council. It would deliver an estimated 13% biodiversity net gain, and it would deliver new water habitats along the realigned Ashbrook. It would also deliver around 2,000 square metres of office floor space as part of the development, and will be capable of attracting businesses from within the district and from across the UK to invest in Lichfield. Sustainability measures include electric vehicle charging points, and 100% of the roof area has been designed to be capable of taking solar panels. It's been designed to BREEAM Excellent and EPC A+ standard. Your spatial planning officer advised the site would create new employment opportunities in a sustainable location. It's deliverable, and it complies with the local plan strategy and the MPPF. The development will contribute to the delivery of Core Policy 7, which supports employment growth in the district and seeks to create up to 9,000 jobs by 2029. It includes reference to the Cricket Lane SDA as a location for employment. No objections have been raised by your technical officers, including policy, trees, environmental health, or urban design. Staffordshire County Highways and Lichfield City Council also have no objections to the proposed development. The applicant aims to commence on site in June 2025, with the employment units first becoming available from July 26 onwards. In summary, the proposal before you this evening represents a well-designed and technically sound application, which seeks to deliver upon the requirements of your local plan strategy. It will deliver much-needed, high-quality employment floor space to meet the identified needs of the district. It is therefore respectfully requested that reserved matters approval be granted in accordance with the officer recommendations set out in the committee report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the presentation. I'll now move over to councillors for questions for officers or any comments. Councillor Powell first, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it actually looks quite a nice development, but I've got a couple of questions. First one is the pool area. Any sort of possibility of making that into sort of a biobed area and that sort of stuff to cope with it? I imagine you're using it as a balancing pool more than anything else. And secondly, I don't see any cycle routes marked out anywhere there. I would have thought it was primary to have a cycle route running along with the extra hedging and treeing around the edge of it. Apart from that, it looks good to me.
Any officer response to that?
So yeah, as you can see, there's the balancing pond area in the north of the site, which is to serve the commercial and the future residential aspects of the site. You know, it may have other capabilities as well as, you know, having planting within it. I think that there will likely be submitted information as part of the submission, which goes into further detail on that point. And it may well have contributed to their positive BNG score. So, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up Councillor Powell on cycling, looking at the drawing that we're looking at on screen, the Knoll Lane, London Road, Cricket Lane junction, as is, we'll have a cycle route all the way down the development side from that junction to the new access, and the Spine Road will have a shared footway, cycleway all the way in the Spine Road within the site to get cyclists into the site. But the cycle route extends, obviously the red line that is shown on the drawing there to the junction at Knoll, London Road and Cricket Lane is part of that cycle route. But the cycle route as part of the bigger picture, just to put you in the frame, the cycle route also extends all the way at Cricket Lane along to the Tamworth Road junction. So anybody living, for example, within the housing estate would be able to cycle out of the estate along Cricket Lane, down London Road and in that way.
Thank you for that response. I'll now bring in Councillor Checkland. Thank you.
Thank you. I do recall this last time that it did come up, where we fought to get the height of the buildings down from 18 metres to 12.5 metres. So I'm glad to see they're still at 12.5 metres. Very pleased to see the solar production side of things. Bit concerned in the presentation that it said that the roof will be fitted, so they could be fitted, but not necessarily that they are going to be fitted. So if that could be considered at some point, that'd be brilliant. I'm a bit concerned about the 10% of parking areas with charging points. By the time this is built and ready to go, we won't be too far off 2035 and the alleged scrapping of petrol engines. So 10% doesn't seem like a very high percentage. I know there's another 10% set aside to be prepared. I just ask that those points be taken into consideration as it goes forwards.
Any other questions from anybody? Councillor Marshall, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I note that this is coming before us at Planning Committee because of a request back almost 3 years ago in November 2021 that reserved matters should come to this Planning Committee, which of course is very much appreciated. None of the statutory consultees have made any real issues here. They all seem to be quite happy with this. And the recommendation being that we delegate to the Director of Planning and Regeneration to approve the reserved matters application subject to the conditions. I am happy to propose that. Can I just say, in terms of the EV points, as the arch heretic here, I simply do not agree with the assertion. I think by 2035, the world will come to its senses and we will realise that I have a petrol and an electric car, and at every opportunity, I use my petrol car and leave the EV at home. So that would be my response. So to the gentleman listening from on behalf of the applicant, please don't think that the world is necessarily moving in the direction of everyone having an EV, because in my world, it simply will not happen. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Marshall. I guess we don't have a crystal ball, so we can't guess what's going to happen with electric vehicles, but I'd now like to bring in Councillor Ashton. Thank you.
Without endorsing Councillor Marshall's views on electric vehicles, I would like to second the motion to approve this application.
We've got a proposal and a seconder, but Councillor Mears has got a hand, yes, so I'm just going to bring her in now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. The green credentials on this build are brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, but it is a bit of a big oversight not to put solar panels on the building where the parking is going to provide electric charging meters. It seems to be more take than give. So I think it is a very strong suggestion by Councillor Checkland to encourage the addition of solar panels on the roof, especially if the roof is designed to have them. And with the expectation that further charging points are going to be needed, it makes sense for the building to be as self-sufficient as possible.
Okay, go on if you want to come in then.
Yeah, I believe the building regs have been updated, which I was going to say on the previous application as well. They've been updated in the last year to make so you'll see new builds now with solar panels on. And that's not because the developers are being really nice and adding them on. It's because they're being forced to add them on. So I believe that which part is it? Sorry. Yeah. More on. So in essence, the developers have to put the solar panels on the roof to a minimum standard, but if they want to add more, that would be nice.
Okay, so we'll move to the vote now. So we are voting to delegate to the Director of Planning and Regeneration to approve the Reserve Matters application subject to the conditions set out at the end of this report and subject to no further objections being raised to the application that have not been previously raised by consultees or neighbours. So can we have a show of hands votes for that, please?
Yeah, it's unanimous. Yeah.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. That's been approved. Okay, yeah. We now come to the exclusion of the public and press. Now, as publicity would be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, the public and press to be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business, which would involve the